The trading outpost of Kepler Station buzzed with the constant hum of a dozen different species conducting business across the galaxy's outer rim. Neon signs flickered in languages both familiar and alien, casting purple and gold shadows across the crowded marketplace. The air itself seemed to vibrate with possibility and danger. Captain Elena Voss adjusted her tactical vest and scanned the crowd with practiced efficiency. 3 months into her deployment with the Terran Defense Corps, she'd grown accustomed to the strange sights and stranger smells of this frontier world. What she hadn't grown accustomed to was the weight of being watched. For the past 2 weeks, every time she entered the central hub, she felt eyes on her. Not the casual curiosity most aliens showed toward humans, something more intense, more focused. Today, she was determined to find the source. She moved through the marketplace with deliberate casualness, her hand never straying far from her sidearm. Past the Zephyrian silk merchants with their gossamer wings, around the hulking Bronthan traders whose voices rumbled like distant thunder. Her enhanced peripheral vision caught movement. There, a figure quickly averting his gaze, Elena's jaw tightened. She'd survived 3 border conflicts and countless skirmishes by trusting her instincts. And right now they were screaming that something was off. She altered her course, pretending to examine a display of Centauri crystals while tracking the figure through the reflection in the vendor's polished metal surface. Human. Male. Mid-30s, she estimated. Dark hair. Lean build beneath standard civilian clothing that couldn't quite hide the disciplined posture of military training. He stood near a weapons dealer's stall, apparently absorbed in examining a plasma rifle, but Elena caught the subtle way his head turned whenever she moved. Her fingers drummed against her thigh, a nervous habit she'd never quite shaken. The scars along her spine began to ache as they always did when stress mounted. Those jagged lines were a permanent reminder of her last mission on Proximus VII, where hegemony forces had nearly torn her apart with energy weapons. The medical nanites had saved her life, but they couldn't erase the twisted tissue that covered her back from shoulder to waist. Was that what he was staring at? Had word somehow gotten out about her injuries? The thought made her stomach clench with familiar shame. She'd worked so hard to project strength, to prove that her scars didn't make her weak or broken. The loose-fitting uniform she favored helped conceal the worst of the damage, but perhaps not well enough. Elena's comm unit chirped softly. "Voss here. Captain, we need you at the security checkpoint," came Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice. "Diplomatic situation developing with the Thanari delegation. On my way." She clipped the comm back to her belt, but not before catching another glimpse of her mysterious observer in a storefront's reflection. This time he wasn't looking away fast enough, and their eyes met for a split second across 30 feet of crowded space. Something electric passed between them, a jolt of recognition that had nothing to do with familiarity and everything to do with an attraction so sudden and fierce it left Elena momentarily breathless. His eyes were the deep blue of Earth's oceans, and in them she saw not mockery or pity, but something far more dangerous. Desire. The moment stretched between them like a live wire before Elena forced herself to break contact and stride toward the security station. But she could feel him watching her go, his gaze burning into her back with an intensity that made her scars tingle, and her heart race in ways that had nothing to do with combat adrenaline. Behind her, Jackson Blake remained frozen at the weapons stall, his hands clenched around the plasma rifle as he watched the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen disappear into the crowd. For 14 days he'd been trying to work up the courage to approach her, and for 14 days he'd failed spectacularly. How could he explain that what drew his gaze wasn't weakness but strength incarnate? 3 days later, Elena's patience finally snapped. She'd tried everything, varying her routes through the station, changing her schedule, even wearing her hair down to better conceal the high collar that hid her scars. Nothing worked. If anything, the surveillance had intensified. Now she caught him watching her during her morning workouts at the public gymnasium, lingering near the commissary during her meal breaks, and always, positioned where he could observe her from behind. The breaking point came during a routine patrol of the station's outer rings. Elena was inspecting the atmospheric processors when she glimpsed a familiar figure, reflected in the curved metal housing. The same lean silhouette, the same careful positioning. But this time he was close enough that she could hear his breathing. Years of combat training took over. Elena spun around in one fluid motion, her hand finding the grip of her pulse pistol as she faced her stalker across 10 feet of industrial corridor. "Why do you keep looking at my back, human?" The words came out as a growl, edged with 3 months of accumulated tension and the deeper pain of assuming the worst about his motivations. Jackson Blake froze, like a man caught in targeting lasers, his hands raised instinctively in a gesture of surrender. Up close, Elena could see the fine details she'd missed from a distance. The laugh lines around his eyes, the small scar on his chin, the way his civilian clothes couldn't quite hide the compact power of his frame. He started, then stopped, color flooding his cheeks in a way that would have been charming under different circumstances. "You what?" Elena stepped closer, her weapon still drawn but pointed at the floor between them. "You think my scars are amusing? Some kind of freak show for your entertainment?" "No!" The word exploded from him with such force that Elena actually took a step back. "God, no. That's not, I would never—" "Then what?" She could hear her own voice cracking with the effort to maintain control. 14 days. 14 days you've been following me, staring at me like I'm some kind of specimen. Do you have any idea what that's like? To know someone is watching you, judging you, and not knowing why?" Jackson's hands slowly lowered to his sides and something in his posture shifted. The nervous energy that had radiated from him since their confrontation began suddenly crystallized into something else. A decision made. "You want to know why I look?" His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. But in the confined space of the corridor, Elena heard every word clearly. "Because you're the most beautiful creature I've ever seen in my life." Elena's grip on her weapon loosened slightly. "What?" "The way you move," he continued, his eyes never leaving hers. "Like a predator, like something wild and dangerous and absolutely perfect. The confidence in your shoulders, the strength in your stance. When you walk away," he swallowed hard, "I can't stop myself from watching. The curve of your spine, the way your hips move, the grace of it. It's like watching art come to life." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Her weapon hand dropped completely as she stared at him in shock. You're not staring at my scars?" "Your scars?" Confusion flickered across his features. "I don't understand." Elena holstered her weapon with hands that trembled slightly. The adrenaline of confrontation was being rapidly replaced by something far more complex and infinitely more dangerous. This man, this stranger who had been consuming her thoughts for 2 weeks, wasn't looking at her with pity or morbid curiosity. He was looking at her with desire so raw and honest it made her knees weak. "My back," she said quietly. "The scars. From Proxima 7. Understanding dawned in those ocean blue eyes, followed immediately by something that might have been pain. "You thought I was mocking you. What else was I supposed to think?" Jackson took a half step closer, his movement slow and deliberate as if approaching a wounded animal. "May I?" He gestured vaguely toward her. Elena's breath caught. She should say no, should maintain distance, professionalism, the careful barriers she'd built to protect herself. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "Yes." His hand rose to cup her face with infinite gentleness, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. "I've spent 2 weeks trying to work up the courage to talk to you. 2 weeks watching you command respect from species that could snap you in half without thinking. Seeing you handle situations that would terrify most people, and all I could think about was how badly I wanted to know if you were as fierce in private as you are in public." Elena's pulse hammered against her throat as his words washed over her. The space between them seemed to shrink without either of them moving, until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "You don't even know my name," she breathed. "Jackson Blake," he said, "and I've been trying to learn yours for 14 days. Elena Voss. Elena." The way he said her name, like a prayer or a promise, sent heat spiraling through her core. Beautiful Elena with the warrior's heart, and the scars she thinks make her less than perfect. Her eyes fluttered closed as his thumb continued its gentle exploration of her face. "They do make me less than perfect. They make you real," he corrected softly. "They make you strong. They make you absolutely devastatingly beautiful." The following evening found Elena pacing her quarters like a caged panther, her mind replaying every word, every touch, every charged moment from her encounter with Jackson Blake. She'd managed to maintain her composure in the corridor, had even completed the rest of her patrol with professional efficiency. But alone in her private space, the careful control she prided herself on was rapidly unraveling. A soft chime from her door interrupted her restless movement. Elena checked the security display and felt her heart skip. Jackson stood in the corridor outside, looking as uncertain as she felt. "Computer, open door," she commanded, then immediately second-guessed herself. She was still wearing her off-duty clothes, fitted black pants and a loose tunic that did nothing to hide her figure, and suddenly felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with her scars. "I brought dinner," Jackson said without preamble, holding up a bag that smelled like genuine Earth cuisine, and an apology for following you around like some kind of stalker. Despite the tension coiling in her stomach, Elena found herself smiling. "Did you actually cook, or is this from Hendrick's place in the commercial sector?" "Hendrick's," he admitted with a sheepish grin. "But I did specifically request the good stuff. Real beef, actual vegetables grown in soil instead of hydroponic solutions." Elena stepped aside to let him enter, hyper-aware of his proximity as he passed. Her quarters were standard military issue, functional but impersonal, with little to indicate the woman who lived there beyond a single photograph of her family back on Earth. "Nice place," Jackson said, though they both knew he was being polite. He set the food on her small table and turned to face her fully. "Elena, about this afternoon." "You don't need to apologize," she interrupted. "I'm the one who drew a weapon on you. You thought I was threatening you. That's on me, not you." He moved closer, and Elena caught the scent of his cologne, something subtle and masculine that made her want to lean into him. "But I want to be completely honest about something." Elena's pulse quickened. "What?" "When I said I've been watching you, I meant all of you. Not just," he gestured vaguely. "I've seen you in the gym, pushing yourself harder than anyone else. Seen you mediate disputes between species that have been at war for centuries. Watched you take down a hegemony infiltrator with nothing but your sidearm and pure determination." The memory of that particular incident made Elena wince. The infiltrator had managed to rake his claws across her ribs before she'd subdued him. Another scar to add to her collection. "And," she prompted when he fell silent. "And I've never wanted anyone the way I want you," he said simply. "Not just physically, though God knows that's part of it. But all of you, Elena. Your strength, your courage, the way you refuse to let anything break you." The air between them crackled with tension. Elena could feel herself standing at a precipice, knowing that whatever happened next would change everything. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked quietly. Jackson's eyes darkened. "Let me show you how I really see you. Let me prove that every mark on your body tells the story of a warrior, not a victim." Elena's breath caught. The offer hung between them, loaded with promise and danger in equal measure. She thought about her scars, about the way she'd spent months learning to hide them, to minimize them, to pretend they didn't define her in the eyes of others. I haven't," she started, then stopped, frustrated by her own hesitation. "Haven't what?" Jackson stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his blue eyes. "Been with anyone since Proxima 7, she admitted. "Since the scars. I couldn't stand the thought of someone seeing them, pitying me. Elena." His voice was rough with emotion. "Look at me." She raised her eyes to his, seeing nothing but sincerity and want so raw it made her dizzy. "I don't pity you," he said. "I'm in awe of you, and if you'll let me, I'll spend the next few hours proving exactly how magnificent I think you are." Elena's resistance crumbled like a fortress under siege. She reached up to touch his face, marveling at the way he leaned into her palm like a man starved for contact. "The lights," she whispered. "I need the lights dimmed." Jackson caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm that sent electricity shooting up her arm. "Whatever makes you comfortable. But Elena." "Yes? I want to see you. All of you. Every beautiful battle-tested inch." Her knees nearly buckled at the intensity in his voice. "Jackson, say yes," he murmured, his thumb tracing circles on her wrist where her pulse hammered frantically. "Say yes and let me worship you the way you deserve." Elena closed her eyes, feeling herself balanced on the edge of surrender. When she opened them again, her decision was made. Yes. The word had barely left Elena's lips when Jackson's mouth found hers. The kiss gentle at first, but quickly deepening as weeks of tension and desire finally found their release. Elena had forgotten how it felt to be wanted, truly wanted, without reservation or pity, and the sensation was intoxicating. "Computer. Dim lights to 20%, Jackson murmured against her lips. and Elena felt a rush of gratitude for his thoughtfulness even as her body hummed with need. His hands framed her face with reverent care, thumbs stroking her cheekbones as he studied her features in the low light. "You're trembling." "It's been a long time," Elena admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "We'll go slow," he promised, then smiled. "Well, I'll try to go slow. You're making it very difficult to maintain my composure." Despite her nerves, Elena laughed. "Your composure? I'm the one who pulled a weapon on you 12 hours ago. And you looked magnificent doing it," Jackson said seriously. "Fierce and dangerous and absolutely in control. Do you have any idea how attractive that is?" His words sent warmth pooling in her core. Elena's hands found the edges of his shirt, fingers tracing the defined muscles beneath the fabric. "Show me," she breathed. Jackson's control visibly frayed at the edges. His hands moved to her tunic, pausing at the hem. "Are you sure?" Instead of answering, Elena grasped the fabric and pulled it over her head in one smooth motion. The cool air of her quarters raised goosebumps along her skin, but it was nothing compared to the heat in Jackson's eyes as he looked at her. "Beautiful," he whispered, his gaze traveling over the curves of her breasts, the flat plane of her stomach, the way her fitted pants clung to her hips. "So beautiful it hurts to look at you." Elena felt herself flush under his scrutiny, but for the first time in months it wasn't with shame. Jackson looked at her like she was art, like she was precious, and the expression on his face banished the last of her doubts. "Your turn," she said, reaching for his shirt. Jackson obliged, pulling the garment off to reveal a torso that made Elena's mouth water. He was leaner than the bulky soldier she was used to, but every line spoke of deadly efficiency and controlled power. A few small scars decorated his chest and arms, the marks of a man who'd seen combat and survived. "Military?" she asked, tracing one with her fingertip. "Former," he said, his voice rough as her touch sent visible tremors through him. "Corps reconnaissance, discharged 2 years ago." That explained the way he moved, the careful awareness that had let him observe her so effectively. "Why didn't you say something earlier?" "Would it have mattered?" Jackson caught her hand, pressing it flat against his heart where she could feel the rapid beat. "I'm not that man anymore, Elena. Now I'm just someone who can't stop thinking about you." The raw honesty in his voice made her chest tight. Elena rose on her toes to kiss him again, pouring all her confusion and desire and desperate need into the contact. Jackson responded instantly, his arms coming around her to pull her against him until every line of their bodies was pressed together. The sensation of skin against skin was electric. Elena had forgotten how good it felt to be held, to be wanted, to lose herself in someone else's touch. Jackson's hands roamed her back, careful and reverent, and she realized with a start that he was deliberately avoiding the scarred areas. "Don't," she whispered against his mouth. "Don't what?" "Don't avoid them. The scars. I can feel you being careful." Jackson pulled back to look at her, his eyes intense. "I don't want to hurt you." "You won't." Elena turned in his arms, presenting her back to him for the first time in 8 months. "Touch me, Jackson. Really touch me." She heard his sharp intake of breath as the light revealed the full extent of the damage. Twisted ridges of scar tissue that ran from her left shoulder blade to her lower back, evidence of the energy weapons that had nearly killed her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Elena's muscles tensed as she waited for his reaction, for the inevitable moment when desire would be replaced by pity or revulsion. Instead, she felt the whisper-soft touch of his lips against her shoulder blade, pressing gentle kisses along the edge of the scarred tissue. "Every mark tells a story," he murmured against her skin, his hands following the path of his mouth. "This one here." His finger traced a particularly deep ridge. "This one says you refuse to surrender." "This one," he moved lower, his touch reverent. "This one says you're stronger than anything that tries to break you." Elena's breath hitched as sensation after sensation cascaded through her. The scarred skin was more sensitive than the rest, and Jackson's careful exploration was sending shockwaves of pleasure straight to her core. "They're ugly," she whispered, even as her body betrayed her by arching into his touch. "They're beautiful," Jackson corrected firmly. "They're proof that you survived, that you fought and won and came back stronger." His arms encircled her from behind, his chest warm against her back. "They're part of what makes you magnificent." Elena leaned back against him, feeling something deep inside her chest finally unclenching. For so long she'd thought of her scars as marks of weakness, evidence of failure, but in Jackson's hands, under his worshipful touch, they felt like badges of honor instead. "Take me to bed," she said softly. What followed was unlike anything Elena had ever experienced. Jackson's touch was reverent but demanding, gentle but thoroughly possessive. He explored every inch of her body with the patience of a man who had waited weeks for this opportunity and intended to savor every moment. In the dim light of her quarters, Elena's insecurities fell away piece by piece. When Jackson's mouth found the sensitive skin along her throat, she gasped and arched beneath him. When his hands traced the curves of her waist and hips with obvious appreciation, she felt beautiful for the first time in months. "I've imagined this," he confessed against her collarbone, his voice rough with desire. "Every night for 2 weeks I've imagined what it would be like to touch you, to taste you." And Elena's question came out as more of a moan as his mouth moved lower. "Reality is so much better than fantasy," he replied, and proved his point by worshipping her with such thorough attention that Elena lost track of time, of place, of everything except the sensations he was creating. When he finally moved over her, their eyes locked in the shadowy intimacy of her quarters, Elena felt a connection that went far deeper than the physical. This wasn't just desire, it was recognition. Two souls finding their perfect match in each other. "Elena." Jackson breathed her name like a prayer as they moved together, finding their rhythm with the instinctive harmony of people who were meant to fit together. "My fierce, beautiful warrior." The endearment shattered the last of her defenses. Elena gave herself over completely to the experience, to him, letting herself feel desired and cherished and whole for the first time since Proxima 7. When release finally claimed them both, Elena cried out Jackson's name as waves of pleasure crashed over her. He followed moments later, his own completion triggering another surge of sensation that left them both trembling and breathless. In the aftermath, they lay entwined in Elena's narrow military cot, her head on his chest as his fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "So," Jackson said eventually, his voice still rough from their exertions, "are you going to draw your weapon on me again if I keep looking at you?" Elena laughed, the sound vibrating against his chest. "That depends. Are you going to keep following me around the station like a lovesick teenager?" "Probably," he admitted without shame, "though I might be a little more obvious about it now." "Good." Elena pushed herself up to look at him, her dark hair falling around them like a curtain. "Because I have a confession to make." "Oh?" "I've been watching you too. Every time you thought I couldn't see you, I knew exactly where you were. Your stealth skills could use some work, former recon." Jackson grinned, completely unrepentant. "And what did you think when you saw me watching you?" Elena's expression grew serious. "At first, I thought you were looking for weakness, for something to exploit. I've gotten used to being seen as damaged goods, and now I think you see me exactly the way I want to be seen." She leaned down to kiss him softly, like someone worth wanting. "Elena." Jackson's hands cupped her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. "You're not just worth wanting. You're worth everything. Worth risking rejection, worth waiting for, worth following across the galaxy if necessary." The words hit her like a physical blow, so unexpected and sincere that her eyes filled with tears she hadn't expected to shed. "Don't you dare make me cry after that," she warned, though her voice shook slightly. "Too late," Jackson said softly, catching a tear with his thumb. "But these are good tears, right?" "The best tears," Elena confirmed, then surprised herself by laughing. "God, listen to me. I sound like something out of a romance novel." "The best kind," Jackson agreed, then grew serious. "Elena, I need you to know this isn't just physical for me. What I feel for you, it's—" "I know," she interrupted softly. "I feel it too. It's terrifying and wonderful and completely insane." "Completely insane," he agreed. "We've known each other for less than 24 hours. 14 days, Elena corrected. You've been watching me for 14 days, learning me, falling for me. And I've been falling for you too, even though I didn't understand what was happening." Jackson's arms tightened around her. "What happens now?" Elena considered the question. In a few hours, she would have to return to her duties, to the careful professional mask she wore to command respect in a hostile galaxy. But that felt like a lifetime away. "Now," she said, settling back against his chest, "I want to learn everything about the man who saw beauty. where I saw only damage. I want to know your stories, your dreams, your fears. I want to know how you take your coffee and what you do when you can't sleep, and whether you're planning to stay on this station long enough for this to become something real. I can answer that last one right now, Jackson said, his voice vibrating through his chest where her ear was pressed. I'm not going anywhere, Elena Voss, not as long as you'll have me. Then we have time, Elena murmured, feeling more content than she had in months. All the time in the worlds. As sleep began to claim them both, Elena reflected on the strange turns life could take. This morning she had been a solitary warrior, convinced that her scars made her unworthy of love. Tonight she was wrapped in the arms of a man who saw her battle wounds as badges of honor, who looked at her with desire and admiration and something that might, given time, become love. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, full of threats she would have to face with courage and skill. But for the first time since Proxima 7, Elena Voss felt like she wouldn't be facing them alone, and that, she thought as Jackson's breathing evened out beneath her, made all the difference in the worlds. The end.